All right, in this video, we'll be looking at the esophagus and the stomach as we continue our path through the digestive system. The esophagus is a flat muscular tube that runs from the larynx into the stomach. You can see that there in the upper right. It's basically just a tube, and it is behind the trachea. And so when you feel of your neck from the front, you're not feeling your esophagus, you're feeling your trachea, and the esophagus is basically right behind that. It is collapsed when there's not food going through it. And there is let's see if I've got a picture of it to kind of do here. Good. All right, so here you can see this area called the gastroesophageal sphincter, and it keeps this closed until you swallow. And then when you open, or when you swallow, it opens up to allow those contents to go into the stomach. The food gets down to the stomach through the involuntary movement of peristalsis, which you see here. And so basically what heartburn is when the contents of the stomach are able to get back up into the esophagus because this gastroesophageal sphincter has relaxed or is not working properly. Sometimes it can just happen naturally anyway because there's basically just stomach acid that's going into the esophagus, which is painful. All right, so let's look a little bit at the stomach. The stomach basically is a temporary storage tank that starts the chemical breakdown of food and particularly starts protein digestion. It converts the food, which at this point is called a bolus, and it produces it into a paste-like compound called chyme, C-H-Y-M-E. The empty stomach is about 50 milliliters, which is really small. It's hard to even imagine. It's not hard to imagine something that small. I'm trying to think of something to compare it to, but just not a very big structure. But the expanded stomach can be as much as 4 liters. And so think of just two 2-liter sodas standing next to each other. So the stomach can expand quite a bit if it needs to do that. There are several major regions of the stomach, and you can see them here. Let's see if this is a good picture. There is the cardial part, which has to do with just right there where it empties into the stomach from the esophagus. There is the fundus, which is this dome-shaped region right here, right beneath the diaphragm. If you can kind of picture the diaphragm is right here. And so this is a dome-shaped region, the fundus. The body of the stomach, which is this big portion here. And then you have what's called the pyloric part, which is down here near the opening to the small intestines. And here you have this pyloric sphincter or pyloric valve. You can see it called either one. And it controls the food going into the first section of the small intestines, which is called the duodenum. Notice here too, the stomach's musculature. The stomach contains all 4 of the tunics that were all 4 of the layers that we talked about in an early video concerning the digestive system. But you can see here that this one has a lot more musculature than a lot of the digestive system and you can see that the muscles are going all different directions. And so what's the purpose there? Obviously, the purpose is to kind of churn up your food, to mix it up, even to kind of, and you can see here, the word that I see used a lot is this pulsion or retropulsion, basically moving it backwards and forwards, kind of pulsing the food or in your stomach. It's kind of a weird, like churning it up. I guess that's what those bubbly things are supposed to represent. And so what is it churning up the food in? Well, there's gastric juices. Most of the fluids in the digestive system are referred to as juices, and this is in an anatomy textbook that I'm getting this information. Juices. The majority of this is hydrochloric acid, which has a pH anywhere from 1 to 3, and it denatures proteins, and it also activates the enzyme that is found in the stomach called pepsin, which begins breaking down those proteins, kills bacteria, even begins to break down plant cell walls. And so the pepsin breaks down protein, and of course the acid then also denatures the protein. There are some other things in the juices like lipase, which is an enzyme that starts breaking down fat as well. And these harsh, let's go into the gastric glands in a minute. These harsh conditions in the stomach have to protect, or the stomach walls have to be protected from the harsh conditions in the stomach. And so this happens by there's a layer of mucus between the stomach walls and the actual skin, or the flesh of the stomach, and it protects that. And then there's also this mucus is a bicarbonate mucus, which is very similar to the fluids that are going to be released into the small intestine, which we'll talk about in a little bit. And then tight junctions between the epithelial cells keep that stomach acid from going through. And here's just a little bit of showing you kind of how these gastric juices are created. And you can see here all throughout the stomach, there are these pits, and these pits lead to gland cells. And these glands are what are going to be releasing the different chemicals into the stomach. Another chemical that I didn't mention is this pepsinogen, which is just a deactivated or an inactive enzyme that is activated into pepsin. And this is a positive feedback mechanism, which the activation of pepsin causes more pepsin to be activated. Kind of we've talked about positive feedback in mechanisms before. And just a couple of imbalances here, going back to this picture. One of them is something that we're all familiar with, and it's the gastritis, which is just an inflammation in the stomach. Anytime that mucosal barrier is broken in the stomach, it causes the stomach tissues to be inflamed, which causes us to feel this. And this can happen for lots of different reasons. There's stomach ulcers and different things like that. And there's bacteria that are involved in causing those. And that is just a deep rabbit hole that I didn't really want to get into. But just this general term, gastritis, just has to do with inflammation of the stomach tissues. When we vomit or throw up, this can be caused by several factors, and it can be caused by the extreme stretching of the stomach. And so just simply being too full can induce this vomiting, and vomiting is an involuntary thing. The brain or the stomach sends messages to the brain. The brain decides it's time to vomit, and then the stomach will spontaneously contract, sending those materials back out the way they came. And there's other things that can cause vomiting as well. Any kind of intestinal irritant, like a bacterial toxin. So if you have a stomach bug, this is what's causing that. Excessive alcohol can cause this as well, just having a lot of that toxin in you. Spicy food even can cause this. Some people, if you have really spicy food, the stomach, rather than taking damage, will get rid of those. And so that can be something as a protective mechanism for the stomach, and then also for the rest of the digestive tract, in order to get rid of those chemicals, to just protect the tissues of the stomach and then the small intestine and so forth.